Hi, this is David Knopfler celebrating 20 years of retrospectives with John Broughton on 3SER KC Radio.
Interest in music or were introduced to music at a relatively young age?
Yeah, I was pretty much into it from the off. I mean, it was my first kind of fun thing that I can remember doing, and we were listening to old 45s when I was probably only 6 or 7, and dancing to the Shadows, you know, and then learning the Shadows steps and playing tennis rackets and stuff. So it was always, and I had a piano in my bedroom from the age dot. I had a drum kit from about the age 10. I mean, it was always around as a kind of. It never occurred to me that it would make a living doing it, but it was the antidote to school, you know.
Yeah. When did that side of it sort of come into it, and you felt like?
I think probably when I went to college, I began to get more serious about it and started playing with other musicians and doing folk clubs and things like that. Well, I was doing folk clubs at school before that, but I think once I got to college, I actually went out to kind of real folk clubs rather than school folk clubs, you know, and doing my own songs and stuff.
At what age were you?
The Straits happened.
What age were you when you started writing your own material?
I just don't ever remember not writing it. I used to write when I was about 12 or 13. I used to write it and pretend I hadn't, because I didn't know it was a cool thing, you know. So I'd go to the folk club and play this thing, and I'd say, this is a traditional Irish folk song, you know, because it was too embarrassing to say that you'd written it yourself.
What writers were inspiring you at this stage?
Probably the biggest one back in if I was then about 12 or 13, I suppose it would have been 19. Let's say I was born 52, would have been about 19, early 60s, mid 60s. Would have probably been Dylan, I should think, more than anybody. Maybe early Joni Mitchell, probably more Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Any folkies, Peter, Paul and Mary even. It was quite early days then, you know.
Yeah. Now, you don't appear to me to be someone who's too concerned with playing the rock star game, and although I'm sure you'd be
good understatement, yeah.
Although I'm sure you'd be happy to sell more records, but
absolutely,
you still don't appear to be too concerned with rock stardom and the publicity machine that goes with it. Is that fair comment?
No, that's correct. I wouldn't pay the price that most, you know, that the industry normally seems to ask of their artists, which is to basically, you know, hang out and schmooze at media parties all day and all night.
Yeah.
And photo opportunities. I mean, you become a kind of a quasi-politician if you get into that.
Sure. I guess being that way inclined probably leads you to a more happy and comfortable and peaceful existence away from the hurly-burly. Would it be safe?
It's taken a long time, but yes, I mean, it's a combination of circumstances and choosing. To some extent, I always tried to have my cake and eat it. I always liked being extremely low profile in England, but I didn't really mind if it was happening somewhere else. But of course, without any profile in England, being an English artist, it does become increasingly difficult to keep any kind of profile going anywhere else, especially when you're not touring.
Sure. And I guess keeping this low profile, I guess it'd be safe to say also that this would assist you in your creative output.
I thought so, but I mean, everybody wants different things for themselves. I'm not judging anyone by it. It's just what suited me. I like family life. I like quietude. I had a belly full of being in the public eye with Dire Straits. I didn't really ever have a desire to have to do that again after that.
Sure. How would you say you're different today as a songwriter as to when you began recording solo albums?
Well, I'd like to think I'm still getting better. The general verdict on my records, I think I've done. The general verdict on my record seems to be that they get better each time. The feedback I get, having a website, you know, and having email means that you get constant feedback from people who are buying the records and telling you what they think.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be the general view seems to be that they've been progressively getting better. Particularly as a writer. I mean, it may just be that I'm moving further and further and further away from what would be regarded as mainstream radio in the process.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. How do you judge your own work? You're a pretty harsh judge of yourself?
No, I'm not anymore. I mean, I think, when I was younger, but I've stopped pushing the river. I think it's more important just to try and. It's such a cliche, but it's really more important is to try and be yourself. I mean, the closer I don't really find that there's any kind of distance now between what I create and who I am. Whereas I think probably when I started out there was. I think it's about finding an authentic. What's this? I think the story goes something like this: that you start out and you've got your heroes and you're following in their footsteps and you're emulating them and you're trying to sound like them, and then you're trying to find your own your own voice and walk in your own footsteps, and eventually you discover that you're actually in virgin jungle, and it's entirely up to you which direction you go in, and then it becomes easier, paradoxically, because you don't really have to go anywhere. You can just see where the river takes you.
If you had to pin it down to one thing, what would you say is your best quality as a songwriter?
I don't know, really. I don't think you can really pluck any bit out. Why does a house stand up? Is it because it's got good foundations, or because you used the right materials in the roof or the walls? Everything counts towards making a good song.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Combination of everything. Although I suppose I've always paid quite a lot of attention to my lyrics. I've never thought that'll do with lyrics, which I'm more inclined to do, say, probably with a chord structure. I'd think for a middle eight, well, I can live with that.
You tinker around a lot with your songs?
Sorry?
You tinker around a lot with your songs? You find yourself editing?
Some get written in half an hour and get recorded just as quickly, and other ones I can be messing about with for years. There's no rule to it. The great thing about songwriting is it isn't formulaic. You never really know which ones are going to just pop out and which ones are going to be a real pig.
How do you know when they're just right?
Same way that you do when you're doing a painting, I suppose. You just know when you know that if you added another line, you'd be overdoing it. Just 25 years of doing it, or whatever it's been, 35 years of doing it.
Yeah.
You just get to the point where you know you couldn't. And it's not something you want to analyse too much either. I mean, you get an instinct. It's an extremely instinctive game. The instincts. What you instinctively get drawn to a subject matter, you instinctively create it. You use a little bit of cold intellect and rationality to kind of structure it now and again, to keep checking back on it to see where you're going to. But a lot of the time, you're really kind of cruising with your creative mind, which doesn't really reflect very much about it. It just does it.
Would you call yourself prolific in terms of songwriting, or?
Yeah, I think so. I've got about 160 songs sitting here on the piano waiting for the next album, so I suppose. But I'm also fussy. I mean, it means that I can then pick and choose which ones I really think are worth spitting out into the public arena and which ones aren't.
But obviously, by the sounds of it, you can turn them out at a good rate, if need be.
Well, it'd be nice if somebody paid me by the song. Yeah, I'd be quick in.
Now, hand in scoring music for film and television.
I can get the work, yeah.
Yeah, can you run through some of those credits for us?
Oh, blimey. Well, what's the last sort of biggie? I mean, I do anything. Some of them are really small little corporate jobs that wouldn't involve you in a credit because it would be something that wouldn't even be broadcast. Mm-hmm. And other things can be kind of fairly major league television projects or film projects. Usually they're film. I mean, if it's a film project, it's usually a film for they call it a film, but it's usually a film for television. I haven't actually as yet made a major league Hollywood type film, but it's stuff. The last big thing I did was a German drama, which was about an 8-hour drama, and it was a kind of 15 million people saw it, blah de blah de blah. I think it was called Der Große Bellheim. Not that would mean a lot to somebody in Melbourne, but didn't mean a lot to me actually. And it's a very different process. That's all about listening to what the producer and director are telling you and just really tuning in on what their requirements are and giving them what they need for the job. It's not about it's got very little to do with me, although obviously the experience that you bring to bear.
How does it compare to you in terms of degrees of difficulty in sitting down and scoring that way?
But that would depend on the producer or director and the material that they give you. I mean, if you're given good material to work with, it's very, very easy. Just like if you're working with good musicians, your job becomes that much easier. Mm-hmm. I mean, a good film, a well-constructed film with a director that knows his stuff, is very easy because the tension and the drama is already there. All you're already doing is enhancing it. Whereas if you've got something where really they're asking you to imagine the emotion that simply can't be seen on the screen, and they're asking you to generate a feeling that is simply not evident in the dialogue or in the way that it's been shot, or in other words, to glue up dodgy cracks, then you're in a repair game. And repairing something is never as easy as it is to create it from scratch. If it's been well constructed, it's an easy job. If it's been badly constructed, it's a hard job.
Yeah, very. Is that a field you want to get into more?
I'm always, I'm like most people in the creative profession, whether they're actors or musicians. I mean, you spend 90% of your time wishing you had more work. You really are. I mean, very few are in the fortunate position of picking and choosing their jobs. You know how when actors are interviewed on television, and you always say, well, what made you choose this script? And they never say, because I was bloody sent it, you idiot. They'll always say, well, I chose this because blah, blah, blah. And it's very rarely true. The fact of the matter is that most of us, whether we're actors or musicians or composers or whatever, we're desperate for work, and we're looking for it all the time. And when it comes our way, we're grateful for it. And whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, we generally say yes to it.
Take it regardless, yeah.
By and large, most of us. I mean, there are a few exceptions, but most of us are not in the privileged position of picking and choosing.
Now, you're active in the production side of your own records.
Yes.
What do you strive for most in a successful production? What ingredients are important for you?
Budget. Try not to lose money. I mean, it's very important. Well, it is, but that's not really what I strive for. I mean, honesty, I think, is probably the most important thing. I mean, trying to get the spirit of the song across. You don't necessarily need a 90-piece orchestra to get the spirit of a song across. Mm-hmm. The spirit of a song, what the singer's really trying to talk about. What is he trying to say, the guy, when he's singing, or the woman when she's singing? What are they trying to communicate? And what's the most efficient and effective way of delivering that message and that emotional statement? That's all, really, I think. Everything else is, I'm less and less gimmicky all the time. I mean, you don't need to rely on gimmicks if the song's strong.
That's right. If you've got a good performance, you really can't go wrong.
And a good performance, exactly. A good performance is everything. So increasingly, over the last two albums, I've gone really for a very live feel in the studio. A small band, just me, my mate Harry, who's a guitarist and a keyboard player. Ray, my percussionist, and who's also had some production experience in his time as a producer. And Kuma, who's also kind of had production. In fact, all four of us have had production experience, so there's no shortage of experience there. And Kuma's my bass player, so the four of us were really, and a good engineer, and you don't really need much more than that. And a lot of the performances will go down live.
Just in general terms, do you think perhaps the advancement of technology and everything has somehow taken some of the heart and soul out of recorded music?
Yeah, I suppose you have to say. I mean, it's got its place, and it has its convenience and has its advantages. But it's just the same as if you were talking about, when you see an old antique or you see an old piece of handmade machinery or an old clock or anything that's been handmade by an artisan is obviously going to have more. You can feel more passion for that than you can for a mass-produced object. Mm-hmm. The more that you rely on sampling and MIDI and all that hard disk recording stuff, which I can do. I've made a couple of albums myself using all those techniques, and it has its place. But you wind up wondering what you're playing at. I mean, 3 days programming a hi-hat that you're then going to replace anyway, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Doesn't really, does it? Now,
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, sorry.
I believe you also handle the production of your own videos?
Yeah, that's because I suppose I'm a kind of frustrated director at heart. I've always wanted to make film. Making music for films, you can increasingly become aware of the shortcomings of it makes you increasingly aware of the process and what goes wrong. Why didn't the director get that shot? Or maybe he got it but the lighting was wrong, or maybe he got it but the sound couldn't be used, or maybe he got it but... And so I've always really enjoyed the video shoots, so I increasingly came to do them myself, again out of a kind of financial necessity too.
Yeah.
And it's hard work. It's extremely... If you're doing it yourself, you really can lose some hair doing it, but it's fun as well. I mean, it's rewarding. And I'm directing, could you believe, a documentary about guitars this summer.
Oh, I did hear something about that, yeah.
Which I hope's going to come off. I mean, they seem to raise the money, so I'm now going to, sort of, having volunteered my services, I'm now kind of putting on the brown trousers because I'm not really sure if I know what I'm doing, But I think it'll probably come off okay.
Is that a historical piece? Is it on guitars, or...?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Is that a historical piece on guitars, or what's it about?
No, it's a festival in Europe. It's the biggest guitar festival in Europe. It's not a festival is the wrong word really. It's more of an event, I think. Mm-hmm. A gathering, a happening. I don't know what the word is for what you'd call those things. People can't get together for about a week and they all talk about guitars and they go to different activities and.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, a conference, I guess.
kind of a conference.
Yeah.
It sounds too formal, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so you might wind up in a cafe at midnight with a Spanish flamenco player and a jazz musician and a rocker all kind of playing together, ad hoc, after having each done their individual gigs during the day or their individual lessons during the day. So you'll have all kinds of stuff going on, and they sell antique guitars and all kinds of bits and bobs, and there's so much activity, and and the guy that organizes it is such a lovely fella that I sort of had the idea, actually, and he said, yeah, why not? And he went off and raised the money to do it, so...
It looks like going ahead.
Sorry?
It looks like going ahead then.
Yeah, I was excited, and now I'm scared.
Video production for other artists, is that something you'd like to get into?
I would love to, yeah.
Yeah.
I've always had a real problem about I have an authority problem 3 miles high, like most musicians, and I'm not good about storing my work, keeping my work, making demo tapes, packaging and promoting myself. Going to what I would need to do is go to a video company, like I don't know, like Limelight or with Phonogram, or with a big Polygram one, or one of these. There's 3 or 4 big production companies in London, and I would need to go to them, cap in hand, and say, here's a showreel of my work, give me a job. And I've never done that. Not with my film work, not with my recording, not with anything, not with my record deals. The record deals I've done have all been really done because somebody approached me. I haven't got the facility really for that kind of managerial function, which really I should have, but I don't. And the price for that, of course, is that I don't get as much work as I should get. But I just can't bring myself to do it. When I start thinking about having to collate and collect, I don't look back, and I don't know what I've done with my master tapes of my videos. I wouldn't know where to go looking for them. I know they're somewhere, but they're in a box somewhere, and then I have to dig it. And then once you start opening boxes, where does it all end? And I never seem to have the time either. It would be 3 days out of my life just to try and organize making that tape, to go and then take it to somebody and say, do you like my work?
Yeah.
And I haven't got the facility for that. Probably if I was 20 years younger and doing it all again, I might make a note and try and keep it all organized. And every time I do make another video, I think, no, I must keep this master to one side because I must make a showreel one of these days.
You never do.
No.
For, and it's extremely comprehensive. That's how I found you.
Right.
It covers a lot more than just your music. Just for
Wide Web. Knopfler.com. Let's get the plug-in, shall we?
Yeah, that's the one. Just for my listeners' sake, can you just run through some of the things that can be found there?
My records, first and foremost. It's a good, basically, BMG should have, the records should be available in Melbourne through BMG. They had the rights to Small Mercies, which was the last album, and the rights to the one before it, The Giver. However, I wouldn't be at all surprised if BMG, or Ariola as it was, in their wisdom, elected not to actually release this recording in Australia. Whether they did or not, they never told me. And in general, my experience has been, from the number of emails I get from people who just simply can't find them in stores, I decided it just wasn't working, and so I decided to put them up on a website on my own label. And so that really has become the quickest and easiest way for people to actually get hold of them, and they're half the price there too.
Yeah.
The public can buy them at wholesale prices, so it's worked out quite well. But what I'd really ideally like to do is my next record out only on the internet and not actually do it through stores at all, but I think probably the numbers don't make sense. You'd need to sell probably, I don't know, about 10,000 to break even that way, and I don't think there's that many punters on the net that would be interested.
Now, I read also that you're involved in some guest speaker work.
Now and again, yeah. I do get sometimes asked to do I did some stuff for the Copyright Protection Society once, and I've done some stuff for some students, for a friend who was running a course, an engineering course, and he wanted me to come and talk about just the difference between doing it according to, when you're studying at college and there's a way of doing things, you get taught a way of doing things, and then you hit the reality of, in your job, so you hit the reality of the radio station, and you find that what you learned wasn't really applied in practice because there simply isn't the time. And just stuff like that you can, the hands-on knowledge is, I think, for people that have never been there, seen it and done it, is quite useful. And it's for stuff like that I generally get asked to come and talk. I mean, it's not a profit-making thing, it's just a kind of a fun thing or a giving something back thing.
Yeah. Enjoy that?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It can be rewarding. It can be unnerving. You know, you're standing there, you've got 3 hours to kill. You've said everything you've ever done and thought of in an hour, and you're sitting there saying, any questions? And everyone just sits there looking blankly at you, going, well, come on, entertain us some more.
It's a speaker's nightmare, that is, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you found record companies to deal with over the years?
They really vary. Some people are fantastic in them, and some are. I mean, just like life, you know, you'll find dreadful people in all walks of life, and you'll find nice people in all walks of life. I liked the guys actually. That when I was last in Melbourne, I was with Phonogram, and with a guy there called David, who was kind enough to invite me back to his house to have a meal, which is a very rare thing for record company executives to do. So he's forever in my good books. And the promoter there was called Isaac, who was a zany character that I liked a lot too. I mean, they were nice guys, basically. So I'd say that probably the Australian record companies would probably come out above, say, perhaps some of the other ones in Europe that I've dealt with.
Yeah.
But I mean, some of them are just awful. Some of them are shoe salesmen, and some of them are kind of almost heroic in the way that in their involvement and concern and understanding of the artist and the music. So it varies, you know. It varies.
Are there plans for a new album at all this year?
Well, it's written. It's here on my piano, and I would like to get on with making it. At the moment, I've got a 9-foot foundations for the new studio here at my house, because we moved recently, so I've had to start again. And we've hit every kind of catastrophe building these foundations that is possible to hit, including power supplies and water mains and collapsing walls for the foundations and wells that we didn't know were there and water tanks that we didn't know were there, and it's like, what else can go wrong? But I guess that'll be finished in about 3 months.
Right.
And once that's finished, I should actually finally be able to get on with it, I hope.
Right, and probably in the same direction as you mentioned earlier, that stripped back down?
I think I'm probably going to go even further.
Yeah?
I think the plan for the next one is to actually lay them down without a band, just with the piano and me, and then overdub only what's absolutely screamingly missing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be almost like an a cappella album, which I've never done, and it'll be kind of interesting to see how naked I dare get away with, you know.
What about live work these days, David? You play around much?
Well, I've been asked to do the odd thing, but I've started really turning them down because the effort of getting into gear. You know, when I do a gig these days at my age, it's like carpet slippers and glasses, you know. And I'm wandering onto the stage with my lyrics in my hand because I don't know them, and I'm having to put them on a music stand. And it has to be a concert. It can't be it has to be a kind of a sit-down, folky kind of concert. I can't do rock gigs anymore. I just don't have the boots for it, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't have the stamina for that kind of electric performance that's needed anymore. I mean, I just wouldn't know where to start. And those kind of gigs are kind of fun, but they take more rehearsal than you'd think. It looks kind of casual, and it looks like you're just walking on and doing it, but it's probably 2 weeks of sort of messing about and thinking about it and organising it. And 2 weeks for one gig doesn't make a lot of sense. So unless you can organise about 20 or 30 of them in a lump, like a tour rather than the odd gig, it's not worth doing the odd one.
Sure.
So as a result of that, I haven't really done any serious playing live for about 3 years.
Now,
I may never do it again. I don't mind, really. I don't miss it.
It's not the be-all and end-all.
No, it'd be nice. It'd be nice to do it if it was. It'd be nice to do it if it was. If you didn't have to make too many compromises, and you could play to a nice audience, and you had a nice promoter, and you knew you could relax and trust the people around you a little bit. But when it's all kind of edgy and it's at the kind of you fall below a certain division in terms of your profile, and you can't guarantee the audience, and you start having to compromise on so many things, you know, transport and equipment and you know, and before you know it, you're really not delivering your work in the way that it would be best served, and you've made so many compromises, and before you know it, you're playing to holiday crowds who want to hear this week's number one rather than anything. No, they want, they just want simple entertainment, and that they've hired the wrong person for the job. Then I'm not doing justice to them. I'm not really serving my audience well if I do that.
And you could probably find yourself resenting actually being there.
Well, it's the mismatch. It'd be the mismatch of the artist with the audience, and it isn't worth doing on those terms.
So, what music you're into these days?
The last thing I heard that I really liked was an album by an American girl called Kami Lyle.
Oh yeah.
Kamilyle, and a new solo album. I think it's her first album, probably on MCA, if I remember right. And lovely album. You can't get it in England. I bought it on the internet, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Really, really impressive. She was touring recently with. What's the name of that other woman? Having a mental blank. There's been a plethora of female singer-songwriters who are all kind of interesting. There's been dozens of them. It's hard to keep track of them. There's been so many. I haven't heard anything that absolutely stopped me dead and thought, God, that's just great. The last thing that did that for me was the Bruce Springsteen album, actually, with that line about smokestacks reaching like the arms of God from Youngstown. Do you know that track?
Yeah, that was on the it was his solo album he did recently.
It was a solo album, that's right. Yeah. It was a very laid-back little album, and it had two cracking tracks, and that Youngstown was one, and the other one was the single, which had a wonderful video with it as well.
Yeah, The Ghost of Tom Joad was the album.
Ghost of Old Tom Joad, what a fantastic track.
A great record.
Those two tracks both absolutely knocked me for six, and that was, must be 3 years ago now?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, about 3 years ago.
I don't think I've heard anything since then that's really made me jump up and down and insist to people that they buy it or listen to it or check it out. I think that was the last really impressive thing I've heard.
Now, for yourself, is there any particular type of album that you'd really like to get out before your recording days are through? Style?
I'd like to be. Anything that stretches. I'd like to make records anything that's in a style that I haven't yet attempted.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to work with an orchestra before I die. I'd like to work with. I'd like to go really more strongly into the jazz idiom. Take that a bit further. See how far I could get. I'd like to make. I'd like to go on making records forever if I could. I would never be out. If I had my every wish, I would never be out of the studio. I'd just go to the studio every day and make my work.
Yeah.
And that's what I would do every day for 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, and I'd be a very happy bunny.
And just to wind up, apart from the documentary, what else is on your books for the rest of '98?
Let me think. Maybe some gigs in America. But I'm sort of wriggling out of them now. There were some festivals booked for that. There's the studio to finish. The film, the documentary will eat up most of '98, I think, because if that starts in June.
Right.
If that happens, once you get into editing, I don't think I'm going to see. I think it will be, and trying to make another album, I think we'll be looking at January '99 before I even begin to think about what else I might want to do. I think making my album and doing that will take care of the rest of the year, to be honest.
Yeah, sounds that way. Okay, David, look, I won't hold you up any longer. I want to thank you very much.
Good to talk to you, John.
Thank you very much for your time.
Everybody in Melbourne.
You all will. And best of luck with your documentary debut. Hope it goes well.
Thanks a lot.
And maybe we'll catch you down here one day in the future.
It'd be lovely to be in Melbourne. I really enjoyed my trip to Australia. It's been, 12 years since I was there. I would love to come back sometime. It's simply a question of an opportunity to be there, a reason to be there. But you never know, do you?
Never know. You'd be more than welcome.
Thanks a lot.
All the best.
Appreciate your interest.
Okay, cheers.
Bye-bye now.